Naughty Steppers, welcome once again. Anticipation has built since this release, and I've finally gathered all of my thoughts on it. It's the one you've all been waiting for. And it is with pleasure that today I'm going to be talking about the new Virtual Riot EP released on Disciple Records, German Engineering. Also known as Christian Valentin Brunn, Mr. Riot is a producer who has achieved legendary status in the dubstep sphere over the last couple of years, releasing a slew of genre-defining EPs across wildly different styles of music, and collaborating with the likes of Kill the Noise, Dat Sick, 12 Planet and many more along the way. All the while cementing himself as one of Disciple's heavyweight artists alongside Barely Alive. And I would also say Dubloads, but he recently left Disciple, so that one doesn't quite work. But Brunn is a producer whose tunes have continued to amaze me on a consistent basis, always reaching new heights with his ideas, sound design and coherence between widely varied elements. And so coming into this thing, I was as excited as ever. I mean, a day cannot be a bad one if there is new Virtual Riot music to feast on. And I certainly wasn't let down on the substance front, with 6 thrilling action-packed songs providing enough to talk for hours, quite frankly. So as a testament to that, I will be changing the format for this review slightly, addressing the songs individually before drawing some thematic conclusions towards the end. Such is the wealth of singular momentary experiences on offer here. And so starting with the opening track, Pray for Riddim, and I mean, we know Virtual Riot can do epic, but this introduction, I mean, Jesus. Organ-filled with lots and lots of grandeur and seemingly Dracula themed. And those little climbing notes in the lead up to the first drop are terrifying and leading only towards an impending doom. And whilst I initially found this first drop to be a little underwhelming, it is stretched and enhanced over time to give it a bit of a further reach as it progresses. And this sets us up very well for the second drop, which is jumpier, weightier, more forceful, and with a more refined rhythm to it. And the swiping sounds squeezed into these drops work very well in 2 ways. They help them tick along very nicely, whilst giving them a more menacing aesthetic overall. And then you have the third drop, which is oozier, screechier, and just that little bit more heightened. And you really have to rate Virtual Riot's willingness to change things up here and take it to the next level, which is what he always seems to do. Then we have the second track, Show Up, which tick-tocks towards its introduction with a very intriguing and mystifying opening sequence, before blowing into consciousness with a masterful vocal from Virus Syndicate. You man wanna roll up ting. Yes, that was me trying to capture the character of the vocal without actually remembering the words. This is Virtual Riot changing things up significantly pace-wise from his usual style, deploying drawn-out synths and toying with the available space very well. And with regards to the drop, I can't say I'm too much of a fan of that underlying fuzzy bass sound. I think it detracts from the more angular notes that try to envelop it, but to no avail. And it's an undeniably overwhelming sound, that muddy one. But bringing Virus Syndicate back into the track so soon definitely injects some needed life into the track once again, before we are greeted with an ethereal midsection classic of recent Virtual Riot, as shown most notably in his remix with Kill the Noise from 2016. And it is here once again that Virtual Riot is trying to incorporate his more delicate side into his heavier style of production. The second drop is more animated and experiments with those original sounds very well, but it still didn't quite throw me off my seat. It skitters around nicely, coupling staccato percussion with some voluptuous synths, but it doesn't quite have that endurance as a sequence or with its individual notes. Now the third track. Oh well, that third track, ooh, it gets me going. I think even if you don't like this music, then the love of anything horror related, films, cartoons, any sort of media will allow you to get into this one. Because honestly, this is one of the most cinematic, all-encompassing tracks that I have heard in a long time. It very much centres around some vocal samples of this creepy guy who we get a couple snippets of in Pray for Riddim, but it is in this track that he really gets involved. And I mean, really gets involved.
Here's a touching story. Once upon a time you died, and I lived happily ever after. The end.
The brief rise following the word after gives the listener the impression that the song is about to kick start, but it's cut short when he says the end, a thoroughly unnerving auditory experience. It's just little details like that that make Virtual Riot such an expert producer. I mean, it is perfectly executed. And there are countless snippets like this smattered throughout the EP which seem too little or too fleeting to make a difference, but they really do. And this song, which is called Chop Chop, transcends very well from the chocolatey, chilling vocal samples to the intricate and threatening build-up, and then onwards to the genuinely frightening and ravenous drop. And as horrible as this is, I just have an image of this manic Cockney serial killer going to work on a victim with a load of really shiny knives. And especially when he says, "I think we're done here." It's just so psychologically manipulative, but it aligns so well with the music that props it up. The strings in particular, in both the build-ups and the progressions of the drops, are at the exact pitch to create the perfect suspense and tension for this petrifying scene. And the percussion matches both the powerful and the delicate, reminding us of the might of this brute whilst giving an insight into his chopping expertise. And I like the second drop too. It's pretty similar but adds little bits of heightened sound here and there, plus the odd squelch to enhance the violence of this image. Then following that we have the appropriately titled Jump the Gun, which is an interesting jump up experiment from the German producer, creating a similar sort of nervousness as with previous tracks, but with a different backdrop altogether. I really dig the staggered nature of this track, but again, as with other songs on this EP, it doesn't quite hit me in the face. There is a lot of excavated space that could be exploited, but Virtual Riot chooses to keep it relatively bare. But I must say I do love the skittish noises that run over the build-up and are injected into parts of the drop. And the volume of each and every sound here is pretty perfect too. Whilst I may not like them in and of themselves, they undoubtedly interact with each other very well. And the fifth track, Computer Music, probably possesses my favourite dubstep of the lot. I love the bouncy nature of it, the way that all the sounds rebound off one another to start with, before a multitude of sludgy effects come into play, throwing this structure a little off course in its muddy design. The piano-led interlude seems out of place at first, a bit too pretty for what coats it, but it melts into yet another haunting build-up for the next drop. And that second drop, I'm like, yeah boy, this is what I came for. Just so wonderfully ferocious, the isolation of those first few notes is absolutely spot on. And it has that added bit of variety that is absent with other tracks on this EP, making for a more bombastic end product overall. And then proceeding to this utterly meaty beat that just chugs away so nicely, with a really nice pull and groove to it. Yeah, that one definitely has me feeling a ickle bit frazzled afterwards. And the final song? Well, I just take this as Virtual Riot trying to keep fans of his more melodic style of production happy, which I completely understand. He has those two styles of production, he's writing an EP, he might as well include both of them, because that is the kind of producer he is. But that's not to say I don't like this one in any way. There's a nice interplay between the vocal chopping and the feathery percussion, supported by those bubbly notes on its bass. And it is a pleasant way to finish such a generally merciless EP. I just find it a little harder appreciating this stuff as much when I'm fully aware of his heavier style, one that is so fervent throughout this EP. Because usually with a calming song like this, at the end of a very heavy EP, it signals the end, and that makes me sad. But all good and great things have to come to an end, including this review. Now, whilst I have talked about these songs individually, I do have a few general points to make on German engineering. Overall, with this EP, I feel like it is a slight regression ideas-wise for Virtual Riot. I mean, he probably wrote these songs months ago when Riddim was really the thing to latch onto. But I'm kinda hoping, with his heavier style, that he reverts to more outlandish styles of dubstep production in the future. That's not to say that I'm not a Riddim fan, because when I find Riddim that I like, I fucking love it. And it is undeniably brilliant for what it's trying to do, the role it's trying to play. I'd even argue that it takes this genre to another level somewhat. But I think Virtual Riot's style, his willingness to fit a whirlwind of huge sounds into short moments and make it all cohere, work better in a brostep format. And in terms of sound design, German engineering is what Virtual Riot has become renowned for over the last couple of years, beyond comprehension, mixdowns, and an exceptional clarity throughout. This is certainly a monstrous EP in the same way that others have been, especially when coming in at 6 tracks. The full force of his music is still there. But I would still end up saying that I prefer the Chemistry EP on the basis of ideas alone. Like, Borg is one of the best dubstep songs of this decade, and the rest of that EP very much follows suit in terms of its ambition. But at the end of the day, I think what makes this thing truly stand out is that it's impact music, but each of these songs tell their own story. By impact music, I'm talking mostly about the weight of the sounds being used and the structure of having a drop following an introduction and a build-up. An introduction or build-up is ticking along slowly and then BAM! The drop hits you. But even though that's the case, each of these songs tell a story and set a scene so well, it's just so captivating. All of the effects are so riveting and really have you in the palm of their hand. Yet at the same time, I feel like I'm in the images that are being painted by Mr. Riot himself here. I think what I'm trying to say is that the largeness of these sounds does not detract from the pictures that he is trying to make here. It's also very interesting to me throughout this EP the minimalistic approach that Virtual Riot takes to his percussion. Why, you may ask? Well, I think that technique supports the Riddim genre in the best way possible, and that style is the one that pervades this EP most, I'd say. And with that, his songs become a bit barer and more skeletal, but I think this is a nice direction that he has taken his music in. Again, as I said, I hope it isn't there for the long haul because I prefer his more bombastic approach to dubstep production. Beyond that, I have a quick point on the structure, which I think he plays around with very well also. He uses a midsection in the Virus Syndicate collaboration. He gets straight to the point with Chop Chop, and he has that grand opening of Pray for Riddim. It's just that I think we as listeners can really take this variation for granted, but it is so important in ensuring that an EP has that appeal from start to finish. I mean, imagine if every song was just introduction, drop, interlude, build up, drop. We just wouldn't like it at all, and I think we have to laud Mr. Brunn here for having that ambition, as always, with his music and within basically every project that he has done over the last couple of years. And lastly, those vocal samples. I'm going to go through a few that I feel were my favourites on the EP. And I'm going to bring the microphone a little closer to make it an even more intimate experience for all you guys out there. So in the first track, I really liked, "Alright mate," the little and "This is getting embarrassing." And in the Virus Syndicate collab, obviously that vocal is insane, so much control, so much verve. And then you have the third one, which is just so fucking brilliant.
"You got blood on my knife, mate. Steady, steady." Ha ha, that was rubbish.
Oh man, they're just so good! Then the fourth one, human-made, human-like mechanism that behaves like its computer. And then with the fifth track, I really liked and as soon as I hit the spacebar, it turns into music. Yeah, it does, mate. Yeah, good observation, my friend. And then with the sixth one, we have the vocal chopping, which I've discussed already. So yeah, loads of vocal samples to give this EP that extra bit of appeal, as if it needed it. As for my favourite with this EP, well, I think you can tell from the amount of detail that I went into with it, it has to be Chop Chop. It's rare that you find a song that paints a picture quite like this one does. And honestly, I get shivers just thinking about that voice. And if you like this EP and would like a recommendation for something similar sounding, then I would say check out Barely Alive. I mean, I think that's the only similar sounding artist that would come close to matching his music sound design wise. Whew! Deep breath. Thank you guys for watching this video, my review of the latest EP from Virtual Riot, German Engineering. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with your thoughts on German Engineering. What did you guys make of it? And be sure, as always, to follow Nawtystep across social media if you haven't already. Everything linked, including that sole recommendation, in the description box down below. And if it's naughty, then you know peeps, so keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see you in the next one. I'm about to head off and take a big nap because that was a big RS review, boy. Over and out. Peace.